The stars over Titan shimmered unnaturally that cycle. Vala stood in the observation core, her translucent skin reflecting the diagnostic lights pulsing from the data displays. Deep in the dark void past Saturn's rings, something was moving, something ancient, impossible, and deliberate. She hadn't felt this kind of tension since the Koros incursion, but this wasn't some pirate flotilla or minor rebellion. The signal they had intercepted wasn't just noise. It was rhythm. It was structured. And it bore unmistakable echoes of a dead species. Humans. The word tasted wrong in her mind, archaic and venomous. She spoke it aloud, a whisper that made her technicians pause. They exchanged nervous glances. The term was outlawed in official channels. Humanity had vanished 5 centuries ago after the self-exile, the final act in a long chain of atrocities that left their homeworld scarred, their colonies abandoned, and their names struck from galactic records. No grave was ever found. No wreckage. Only silence. Until now. The signal repeated every 7 minutes. Compressed, complex. Layers of encryption embedded within ancient Terran linguistic scaffolds. Valeth initiated an interpretive scan. The result confirmed her dread. They were returning. Her second-in-command, Thernaz, hovered beside her. He speculated it could be bait. An echo protocol, maybe a glitch in subspace patterns. She dismissed it. This was deliberate. A beacon, not a fluke. The kind of signal you send before arrival, so your enemy has time to understand what's coming and that they cannot stop it. The signal's origin was beyond the heliopause, exactly where the last traces of humanity had been recorded. The timing aligned with gravitational anomalies just detected in the Oort cloud. Subspace itself was being displaced. Something was forcing its way through, not stealthily, but with purpose and scale. Whatever it was had bypassed the limits of fold space travel using raw gravitational manipulation, the kind of energy output that would annihilate most known civilizations simply in the attempt. At first, the tracking systems misclassified the incoming data as a field of asteroids. But the patterns corrected. Spearhead formations, layered shielding, heat signatures massed in cold space envelopes. 12 groups, each flanked by thousands of independent drives, all synchronized. Valeth watched the maps update and knew at once. This wasn't exploration. This was a fleet. Energy readings began to spill through the filters. Some of it was outside the measurable spectrum. Weapons-grade fusion. Inertial compensators powerful enough to generate artificial gravity wells. Core signatures rotating on quantum axes. These weren't repurposed relics. These were built for one thing: eradication. Her memory summoned images she'd never seen but had studied in suppressed archives. Human vessels, brutal, utilitarian, forged in desperation and tempered in annihilation. Not elegant, but invincible. They had names like judgments, retribution, silence, ashfall. And now they were real again, crawling from myth back into existence. She accessed forbidden data reserves, restricted by council mandate. The stories buried in those files weren't briefings, they were warnings. Fragmented footage, ancient and corrupted, showed what human war looked like: unpredictable, relentless, executed with total clarity of purpose. Biologicals fused with machines. Genetic self-modification without restraint. Command structures adapted dynamically mid-battle. No 2 human responses were ever identical, except in outcome. Total domination. The signal repeated. This time with attached vectors. Not toward Mars. Not toward the Jupiter defense perimeter. Earth. The homeworld, untouched and quarantined. The birthplace of the species now returning with weapons the galaxy had never seen. They weren't returning to replant flags or light beacons. They were returning for finality. Other outposts had begun reporting similar contact. Signal spikes. Mass displacement. Panic bled into official channels. Emergency protocols triggered half-hearted mobilizations. But Valeth already knew. None of it would be enough. She opened the emergency line to the Interspecies Defense Council. Her voice was steady, though her inner membranes fluttered with the instinct of something ancient: fear. Humanity was not gone. Humanity was not broken. It had simply been patient. And now, it was coming back. Not to be seen. Not to be welcomed. To be obeyed. Or removed? Mars received no warning. One moment, the planet's orbital defenses monitored quiet telemetry. The next, several layers of command protocols evaporated. Communications blacked out across a third of the network in less than a second. The silence was not caused by interference, but by annihilation. Kinetic rods traveling at fractional light speed impacted designated defense nodes, leaving behind no fire, no smoke, only absence. Within minutes, the high-orbit satellites relayed fragments of visual data. Massive silhouettes, impossible to scale against the backdrop of space, emerged from stealth vectors. No energy build-up, no preamble, just presence. Human ships, if they could still be called that, appeared more like moving fortresses. Asymmetrical, jagged, layered with redundant armor plating, they bore no aesthetic coherence, only functionality optimized for survival and obliteration. The command director of the Martian Coordination Grid, a Zendari veteran of 8 campaigns, attempted a full-spectrum hail. Multiple languages, peace statements, surrender terms. Nothing returned. No words, no symbols, not even recognition. One of the orbiting drones captured a close-range image, an enormous vessel rotating slowly, revealing a hull etched with old Terran characters, unreadable to most but chilling in tone. No name, no flag. The attacks resumed. A second wave of kinetic strikes cratered the equatorial settlements. Mars' largest civilian habitat, Arachno's Reach, ceased to exist in less than 2.4 seconds. Shockwaves rippled through the mantle, causing tectonic failure in surrounding sectors. Human weapons didn't just aim to kill, they disassembled planetary infrastructure with surgical force. Not a single energy weapon was used. They let physics do the work, harnessed and directed with terrifying precision. Atmospheric deployment followed. Pods descended silently, slipping past failing defense grids. What few entire batteries remained tried to respond, but their targeting systems were overwhelmed by ECM pulses and decoy clouds. The pods hit the surface in tight formation. From them emerged humanoid forms, tall, armored in matte black exosuits with no visible identifiers. They moved in coordinated silence, each unit acting autonomously, executing objectives in parallel. A surviving drone captured them cleansing a military bunker. No gunfire. No thermal discharge. The footage showed occupants convulsing, clutching their heads, then falling limp. Neurowave disruption, likely neural cascade algorithms deployed wirelessly. The bunker's system self-erased before the humans left. Data was not to be stolen. It was to be denied. Every movement was methodical. No destruction for display, no violence for chaos. Mars was being flattened not by rage, but by strategy. Structures that provided no tactical advantage were left untouched. Strategic communication hubs, power plants, weapon caches, precisely targeted and neutralized in optimal sequence. Resistance was treated not as threat but delay. On the third hour, a final defensive broadcast escaped the surface. The voice was strained, possibly synthetic. It addressed the unknown aggressors as descendants. Pleaded for clarification. The voice begged, "What do you want from us?" The only response was transmission overload, audio filled with layered human voices speaking in perfect synchronicity. The words were clinical. Compliance was never requested. You occupied a grave. Now leave it. By the fourth hour, orbital control had been lost. Mars moons no longer relayed. The network collapsed inward, fragmented. An automated distress ping was all that remained, repeating into the void with decreasing strength. When reinforcements from the outer sectors finally entered Martian space, they found a dead world. Not in the traditional sense, its terrain remained largely intact. But its order, its authority, its presence in the system's hierarchy, was gone. Flattened. Its role as a forward command, as a bridge to inner colonies, erased. Human vessels lingered only long enough to verify system silence. Then, they adjusted formation, realigned their approach vectors. Their trajectory was unchanged. Mars had not been a battle. It had been a message. One received not through words or negotiations, but through absolute execution. The fleet moved on, the red planet dimming behind them, just another node marked complete. No celebration. No ceremony. Just forward momentum. The Council convened in emergency quorum, transmitting from across the system's scattered zones. Composed of species who had ruled the core systems for centuries, their expressions ranged from disbelief to restrained panic. Mars had not been a mistake. It was a calculated eradication, and now the pattern was clear. The human fleet was not seeking conflict. It was executing a sequence. The system's defensive architecture had been built on deterrence, not readiness. For generations, the dominant belief was that no force could emerge capable of challenging the coalition's dominance, especially not a long-extinct species consigned to myth and cautionary tales. Now, their oversight had cost them their forward command planet. The strategic implications were catastrophic. Mars had been the primary relay for Earth's surveillance cordon. Its fall meant one thing: nothing stood between the human fleet and their destination. Arguments erupted. Deploy reserves from the outer belt. Activate the dormant war platforms orbiting Neptune. Even raise old AI contingents from deep crypt storage. But there were no unified decisions, just fragmentation. The problem wasn't the loss of Mars. It was the realization that every contingency had been calculated by the enemy in advance. Communication hubs were compromised. Long-range FTL nodes were silent. Whatever algorithms the humans were using, they were not just disrupting systems, they were predicting decisions. Surveillance logs from peripheral observatories began uploading fragments. Not of battles, but patterns. Each human fleet formation rotated its command lead every 47 minutes, with no delay or visible signal. Entire unit hierarchies adapted in real time, making central targeting impossible. The idea of disabling command vessels became irrelevant. There were no single points of failure. One intercept contained data from a captured probe near the human fleet. It had attempted passive scans. What it revealed was alarming. The core ships radiated no life signs. Instead, their heat signatures suggested full cybernetic integration. Organic signals existed, but they were diffused, intertwined with ship systems. Human command structures had evolved beyond individual captains. The fleet operated like a distributed mind, one organism executing a single will. That will, evidently, was Earth. The Council's scientific division proposed containment, a gravitational net triggered in orbit, capable of destabilizing trajectory paths and shredding vessels on entry. Theoretically effective, but untested at scale. Worse, implementation required cooperation from Earth's perimeter AI clusters, long dormant and sealed under treaty law. Opening them meant unleashing systems that had nearly ended the first galactic concord centuries ago. The alternative was worse: let humanity reclaim Earth without resistance and solidify their return. Debate stalled. Council consensus required 75% affirmation, and two factions immediately withheld support. Time ran out. Human fleets bypassed the asteroid defense line without engagement. Surveillance picked up encrypted pulses transmitted backward through the fleet, silent acknowledgments, possibly mission updates. There was no deviation, no hesitation, no demand. Every moment felt rehearsed. In the inner belt, independent mercenary stations attempted unauthorized engagement, hoping to earn favor from the Council or profit from recovered tech. All of them vanished within minutes. No wreckage. No signals. Just static where transponders once chirped. Panic spread to civilian sectors. Migration vessels attempted system-wide evacuations. Chaos erupted at transport nodes. The human fleet didn't fire. It didn't acknowledge the chaos. It simply ignored it. The message was clear: those not in its path didn't matter. This wasn't conquest. This was reclamation with zero interest in opposition. Then, one signal pierced the darkness. A broad-spectrum pulse emitted from the lead vessel. Uncoded, clear. Solar orbit lock confirmed. No further warnings. That was the final update before Earth's orbital sensors went dark. The Council issued a system-wide blackout. Civilian media was suppressed. Transit was frozen. But nothing changed the reality. The humans had arrived not as diplomats, not as refugees, not as wanderers seeking return. They came as enforcers of a decision made long ago. A homeworld abandoned not out of loss, but strategy. The fleet was now inside Earth's orbit. No weapons raised. No communications active. They waited. Not for permission. For alignment. Whatever was about to happen would not be announced. It would simply begin. The surface of Earth lay scarred and silent beneath thick quarantines and artificial weather controls. Once a cradle of civilization, it had become a forbidden zone, left to rot under layers of regulatory embargoes and biohazard shields. The remnants of old cities were ghostly skeletons, overgrown with synthetic moss engineered to filter toxins. The atmosphere, carefully maintained by automated systems, hummed quietly beneath domes that barely held the planet's fragile equilibrium. Humanity's return was not a march of armies or a flood of settlers. It was surgical precision executed on a planetary scale. The fleet's arrival triggered automated reactivations of legacy systems hidden beneath the crust, factories long silent, weapons silos sealed since the self-exile, data vaults locked in quantum encryption. Ancient AI protocols, dormant but intact, began to stir. Earth was awakening under a command it had not felt in centuries. The first external signals came not from orbit, but from deep underground. Massive subterranean complexes lit up with activity, research facilities buried beneath the Siberian ice, bunkers beneath the Sahara sands, and launch sites hidden in the Mariana Trench. Each one reignited simultaneously, aligning with encrypted pulses from the fleet. The planet itself was synchronizing with the returning force. Satellite arrays tracked rapid energy surges in the upper atmosphere. Ion storms flared unnaturally, evidence of mass-scale atmospheric reconfiguration. The fleet's ships, suspended in geosynchronous orbit, released swarms of nanomachines, microscopic, self-replicating devices programmed to terraform. Their purpose was not just restoration, but transformation. They repaired decades of environmental degradation, but also prepared the surface for new bioengineered lifeforms designed to reclaim the planet's biosphere on the fleet's terms. On the ground, a small human resistance faction emerged from hiding, descendants of those left behind during the self-exile. They operated in fragmented cells, their knowledge of old Earth technologies limited to lore and scavenged artifacts. Their efforts to communicate with the incoming fleet were ignored or overridden by automated suppression protocols. Attempts to sabotage nanomachine deployment failed spectacularly. Resistance was systematically neutralized without direct confrontation. Infrastructure collapsed under coordinated cybernetic assaults. Power grids were taken over by AI constructs indistinguishable from their operators. In orbit, the fleet's command vessel initiated the next phase. It transmitted a series of coded commands to Earth's dormant weapons systems. Silos buried deep under mountain ranges activated, but instead of launching warheads, they discharged environmental remediation agents, neutralizers targeting pollutants, radioactive decay, and atmospheric contaminants. The transformation was ruthless, obliterating not just chemical waste but any human technology incompatible with the new ecosystem. Civilian populations, where still extant in orbiting habitats or scattered colonies, were subjected to mandatory quarantine. Evacuation was offered as a formality but enforced through overwhelming presence. The message was unequivocal: Earth would be reclaimed, purified, and repopulated according to designs far beyond any current lifeform's comprehension. Returnees were no longer humans as once known, they were architects of a new evolutionary order. Communication attempts with external governments met with silence or automated denials. The fleet operated independently, unbound by treaties or diplomacy. Their only directive was reclamation. The old political frameworks dissolved under the weight of reality. Earth's sovereignty was erased not by battle, but by inevitability. Underneath this quiet dominance, the fleet's bioengineering efforts accelerated. Genetic templates, recovered from deep archives and enhanced with alien sequences, were deployed via atmospheric dispersal. New species, designed to thrive in the transformed environment, began to take root. These creatures exhibited rapid growth cycles and adaptive intelligence, designed to reclaim Earth's surface swiftly and decisively. Reports from the outer colonies hinted at broader implications. Human fleets extended their reach beyond Earth, establishing control points on moons, asteroids, and derelict stations. Each was integrated into a vast network, a web of control radiating from the homeworld. This was not conquest, it was restoration on a scale that defied prior understanding. The final phase unfolded silently. Earth's skies darkened as geoengineering domes stabilized climate control. Old cities were buried beneath engineered forests, and oceans replenished with synthetic life. The planet shifted from ruin to cradle once more, but not for those who had called it home before. It was reborn as a fortress, a laboratory, and a seedbed for what the returning humans had become. The message was clear to any who watched: Earth belonged to them again. And they would stop at nothing to ensure it stayed that way. The galactic community watched in muted horror as the solar system fell under an iron grip no one could challenge. Reports flooded in from neighboring star systems, trade routes severed, diplomatic envoys ignored, and entire communication arrays rendered inert. The humanity fleet, once a whispered myth, was now an undeniable force reshaping interstellar order. Resistance efforts proved futile. Fleets dispatched from allied coalitions arrived only to vanish within days, swallowed by an enemy that fought with ruthless efficiency and unyielding coordination. Their tactics defied traditional warfare. They avoided large-scale battles, opting instead for precision strikes that dismantled infrastructure and command hierarchies with clinical accuracy. No prisoner was taken, no message sent. Their silence was a weapon as lethal as their technology. Within the core worlds, governments fractured under pressure. Leaders debated evacuation, capitulation, or guerrilla warfare, but no plan could counter the overwhelming strategic advantage held by the returning humans. Their integration of cybernetic systems and bioengineered enhancements blurred the line between soldier and machine, granting them reflexes and endurance unmatched by any known species. As Earth stabilized under the new order, the humanity fleet extended its influence outward. Moons, asteroids, and derelict stations were swiftly brought under control, forming a network of fortified waypoints. Each installation served dual purposes: resource extraction and forward defense. Their presence ensured that no external force could easily penetrate the system's defenses or disrupt the ongoing reconstruction. Scientists who had once studied human history found themselves scrambling to understand the new evolutionary trajectory. Genetic sequences recovered from fleet archives revealed deliberate manipulation at a species-wide scale. Humans had transcended their biological origins, becoming a collective organism optimized for survival and conquest. Their minds were linked through quantum neural interfaces, sharing data instantaneously and adapting to threats before they fully materialized. Cultural memories were erased or rewritten. The humanity that had once been fragmented by war and ideology had fused into a singular purpose. The old Earth's chaotic diversity gave way to a unified will, one that prioritized reclamation and expansion over individual desires. To outsiders, this was no longer a people but a force of nature, relentless, unstoppable, and absolute. Diplomatic overtures from remaining galactic powers were met with silence or direct rejection. The fleet's commanders made no pretense of negotiation. Their message was simple: the solar system was reclaimed, and any attempt to interfere would be met with decisive retaliation. Attempts to broker peace failed as the humans' vision left no room for compromise. Within the system, surveillance was omnipresent. Autonomous units monitored every movement, every transmission. Any dissent was swiftly identified and eradicated. The new order was maintained through a combination of overwhelming technological superiority and a cultural ethos that embraced absolute control. Freedom, as it had been known, was sacrificed for survival and dominance. Yet beneath this veneer of order, questions remained unanswered. What had driven humanity to such extremes? Was this resurgence a form of penance, evolution, or something darker? Observers speculated on the fate of individual identity within the collective, fearing the loss of what made a species truly alive. Some whispered that the humans had become something beyond comprehension, a living weapon forged in exile and sharpened in silence. As years passed, the solar system transformed. Once a hub of diverse civilizations and vibrant exchange, it became a fortress world and a symbol of ultimate reclamation. The fleet's presence was permanent, their power unquestioned. Other species adapted by either submitting or retreating to the fringes, altering the balance of power across known space. The return of humanity was no mere chapter in galactic history, it was a paradigm shift. It challenged assumptions about extinction, survival, and what it meant to be a species. The fleet's arrival declared a new order, one that demanded respect and instilled fear. And for those who witnessed it, the message was unmistakable. The universe had changed, and humanity had returned not as supplicants, but as masters.